After years of swiping, ghosting, and trial and error, I finally figured out which dating app actually gets the most dates. For over 2 years, I've used Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, and OkCupid, and I'm gonna rank them from worst to best based on my actual results. So if you're stuck in dating apps and you're not getting any matches, this might change everything. But quickly, before we get into the rankings, let me tell you exactly how I judge these dating apps. I'm judging them on three main things. Number one, how many matches I got. Number two, how easy it was to start conversations. And number three, and most importantly, how many dates I actually got. Now let's jump into it. All right, coming in last place from these four apps, and I'm gonna say the male to female ratio for each app, and I'm gonna list the pros and cons to each, but coming in at last place at number four by far is gonna be OkCupid. So for me personally, and I'll get into a lot of the cons here in just a second, I really didn't have a great experience on this app. And the male to female ratio for this app is actually 74% male to 26% female, which is pretty high and not great for us guys. So I'm gonna list a pro because I'm gonna try to be nice here. I'm gonna try to take pros from each app, but there's definitely a lot more cons. If there's one pro I'll say about the app is you definitely have a lot of variety, and you'll see what I mean if you end up downloading it. Like you'll see people from like different cultures, different cities, even half across the globe, more than just 1 minute. But you definitely get a bit of uniqueness when it comes to the app. However, I personally didn't enjoy it. It's a lot of like gay lesbian community and stuff like that. I'm not judging if you're into it, but for me personally, that's just not my thing. So that's the one pro if you're into that, I guess you could say. But for me, there are a lot more cons on this app, and I'll start breaking them down right now. All right, coming in at con number one, there are a ton of fake profiles. So you'll see what I mean if you download it. Some of them are obvious, some of them aren't obvious. But if you get like a 20-year-old girl, matching you and messaging you saying, "Do you want to have a threesome with me and my friend?" You probably know it's a fake profile or it's a troll, right? So that's the one problem. Well, more problems than OkCupid. But that's one big problem. I'd say there's so many trolls and fake accounts out there, and for me, it's kind of overwhelming. Just kind of decide like, is this person real? Is this person not? So just be aware of that if you do decide to download the app. Number two, it's a little bit harder to see who likes you for con number two. So you'll get a good idea. Like you'll see the picture. It's a bit of a shadow of that picture. But the problem is they don't really show that person in the home screen, and they make you do a lot of digging to find that person because obviously they want to keep you on the app. So they kind of tease you with like, okay, this person likes you. You kind of see who they are, give a good idea. It's kind of like Bumble. They kind of show like a bit of a blurry picture, so you have a good idea. It's kind of like that in OkCupid, but you're really going to dig a lot of times to find at least the good matches. More than that, just 1 second. But yeah, just know if you do get a lot of likes, it is hard to match with those people. The third thing, and this is probably my biggest beef from this app, is half the people you match with are going to be people from across the world. So you might be thinking, like, what are you talking about? Like, if I put my location, it should be within like 20 miles, 20 kilometers, whatever it may be. So here's what they do. So a lot of females, let's say they're from like Europe or Africa or South America, they'll change their location to a city. So for me, like I'm around Toronto, like I'm an hour away from Toronto in Canada. So a lot of them will just put Toronto, Ontario, because they want to match with you. They either want to like practice their English or they potentially just want to move into your country. So it's usually one or the other. And I remember like one time I'm talking to this girl, like it's a pretty good conversation, like the first day or two in. And then I eventually asked her, I'm like, "Oh, where are you from?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm from Germany. I want to come to Canada eventually." I'm like, "Why are you matching me if you're from Germany?" So just keep that in mind on OkCupid. There are a lot of trolls, and I find a lot of people you match with actually aren't from the city that you're in. It might say they are, but they're just doing it to either talk to you and practice their English, or because they potentially want to move there. So overall, my experience with OkCupid, for you guys, I definitely would not recommend it. Just because, like I said, there is a large male to female ratio. I didn't get a ton of dates personally. I got a few, like don't get me wrong, more conversations than actual dates because it's hard. It's just hard to conversate in that app. You'll see what I mean. Like it's very outdated, and I just didn't like kind of filtering out like who's real, who's not. And then again, it's frustrating when you actually talk to a nice girl, and then you realize she's from like the other side of the world. So overall, my recommendation for OkCupid is a thumbs down. Coming in at number three, I have Tinder down, and the male to female ratio for this one is about 75% males and 25% females. So a very large guy to girl ratio for this. Let's get some pros, and then I'll talk about some cons. Pro number one for, at least for myself on Tinder, I found it was very easy to get matches because there's just tons of people on this site. There's about 530 million users downloaded the app by February 2024. So fast forward a year later, I guarantee there's obviously a lot more users on there. Like, I don't know if this is like a me thing, but maybe it's the way I look. Maybe I look more of like a D-bag and it just looks good on Tinder. Like, I don't know. But for me, like, I was getting like, 5, 10, 15 sometimes likes a day. And it was just easy to get matches. It was easy to start conversations with people. Pro number two is it definitely is easier to meet up with people. So if you just want to have like a casual drink or other things that we won't get into, it's a lot easier to do on Tinder for sure, I would say, compared to the other apps. For all the reasons I just talked about, you're going to get more likes on average compared to the other apps, and just a lot more people on the apps as well. Another little cool pro of Tinder that I kind of cracked the code on, maybe like this is a bit of a pro tip I'm giving you right here, but it's definitely easy to see who liked you, and you get a lot more swipes compared to the other apps as well. Now, here's your pro tip for how to see who liked you. Maybe they changed it the last few months because like I've been off the app since like summertime 2024 when I met my girlfriend. But basically, here's what happens in Tinder. Let's see the name kind of pops up. So let's say whatever Amanda likes you. What I did is I would close the app and then I'd refresh the app, and then usually you'll see that person the second or third profile in. Again, I don't know if I just gonna like crack the code on it, or maybe you do that as well. But for me, it was just like they're basically giving the person away, and I can see their profile essentially right away. So that's a bit of a pro tip for you if you haven't done that and you want to, kind of see who likes you. Anytime you get a like, refresh the app, and typically speaking, you'll see it within the first 5 profiles of that. And like I said, the last pro, you do get a lot more swipes compared to the other apps. So those are some pros in Tinder for Tinder. Now we're gonna get into some cons. All right, con number 1. So like I said at the beginning, it's a very high male to female ratio on Tinder. So if you do want to have success on here, you definitely have to stand out. Now, I made a video on this, which I'll link at the end of the video, so make sure you don't miss that, because there are a few ways you can be unique, but it is a large male to female ratio. So you got to understand that. And for every guy out there, there's already 3 females on Tinder. So the competition is very high. Number 2, it's not great for relationships. So I'm sure, as you know, Tinder is definitely more casual. Now, this is not to say you can't get a relationship on Tinder. Like I was talking to a few girls where, potential relationship was in the works. I just wasn't ready yet, and maybe that person just wasn't right for me. So you can definitely get a relationship on Tinder, as there are people out there. But I would definitely say if you are looking for more casual, this is probably the place to go, like more casual short term. But if you are looking for a girlfriend, this might not be the best bet for you. And the third con I have for Tinder, kind of like OkCupid, but not as bad. There are a lot of bots on there as well. So you'll see a lot of like younger girls and just kind of like promoting their Snapchat or whatever it may be. There's definitely a lot of bots on that. Just as long as you don't mind like, exiting them out and ripping through them, you're good to go. It didn't bother me that much, not compared to OkCupid. That kind of really pissed me off, that site, I'm sure, as you can tell. But those are the overall 3 cons. So my overall take on Tinder, for me, it's hard to rip it too much because I did have a lot of success with, meeting up with girls, having casual drinks and stuff like that. But if you are looking for a relationship, I would say it's probably not worth your time. And again, not to say you can't get a relationship on Tinder, because you definitely can. And I know people who have, but it's very male to female ratio. And even the females on there, probably, it's 75, 75 to 25% male to female. A lot of the 25% of the females are probably still looking for more casual. Again, there's definitely outliers, but keep that in mind. And overall, if you're looking for a relationship, Tinder's probably not the best for you. If you're looking for more casual, then I would definitely recommend Tinder. All right, coming in at number 2, and the male to female ratio for this one is 64% guys to roughly about 36% females. So still high for the male front, almost 2 to 1, but definitely better than OkCupid and Tinder. So let's get some pros, let's get some cons, and I'll give you my overall take on Hinge. Some pros, it's definitely better for relationship potential, because most girls on Hinge really aren't looking for casual. You'll see a few, and I've actually met up with them like back in the day, a few years back, on Hinge that are casual. But for the majority of them, they're looking for relationships. So if you are looking for a relationship, the girls on there are pretty serious, and you're not going to be wasting a ton of time matching, with people and trying to figure out what they're really looking for. The second cool part about Hinge is you can really show off your personality more. So you can do things like voice notes and videos and stuff like that. I never really did that myself because I think it's like awkward for me personally. But if you're into that sort of stuff and you have a good sense of humor, you can really show it off on Hinge compared to Tinder and stuff like that. Like you can literally sing on there. You can do stuff like that. So it's kind of cool in that way. So if you have a good personality and a good sense of humor, definitely take advantage of Hinge because this would be a lot better opposed to just kind of looking at photos like something like Tinder, for example. And the third part I really liked about Hinge is you can see exactly who likes you. So there's no guessing. So you'll see the person again, unless it changed the last whatever 5 months or so. But you'll see the person, and it just pops up as a like. And I think it's pretty cool. You either match them or you don't. Now, the demoralizing end, if you like someone and you're like, oh, this is the girl, but they don't like you back, you're like, oh, fuck, like, what did I do wrong? Am I ugly? Am I this? And you start to kind of get pissed off. So that's like the downside of it, because you know if you like someone, they're going to see that like. But the cool part is, if that person likes you, you either can choose to match them or not. And I thought that was a pretty cool part of Hinge. Now, those are the three pros, but there are some cons to it as well. All right, con number one is you don't get that many swipes. Unlike Tinder, you get like a bunch per day. You just like fire them off. For Hinge, you only get like, I think it's like 7 per day or something like that. And they can run out pretty fast. And it's kind of annoying, especially you're on the app, you're enjoying yourself, and next thing you know, it's like you've reached your free amount of likes. So I think they really try to promote you get into the paid plan, which I get to a certain extent, but just be patient with that because you only get a certain amount of likes on Hinge, and it could definitely be frustrating at times. Con number two that I found, there's not as many fish in the sea when it comes to Hinge. So I know I said there was like a 64 to 36% female ratio, which is better than Tinder and OkCupid. But I just find in Hinge, there's really not as many users compared to Bumble. And the stats to back it up, I think there's like 4.8 million monthly on Hinge compared to like 9.7 on Tinder. So it is definitely a lot lower on Hinge. And it is harder to get matches on it as well. It's not a bad thing altogether because sometimes less matches, but the right matches are better. So it's a little more niche specific. But just know you're probably not going to get as many matches on Hinge compared to these other sites that I'm talking about. And the last con I have actually for Hinge is this. Maybe this is my personal experience, but I feel like I got blocked a lot. Like I find the ladies were a lot more impatient on there. Like I said, like one thing, like hey, like just making sure, like, what are you looking for? Next thing you know, blocked. Or hey, what are you up to tonight? Blocked. Like it was just kind of weird. Like it's definitely anecdotal. Like I have nothing to back it up, but just from my personal experience, like I felt like I got blocked a lot more in Hinge when I'm just having like a simple conversation. So I think ladies on Hinge, they know what they want, right? Like they're looking for a relationship. They know they have the leverage. It's 64% guys compared to 36% females. So if a guy doesn't really fit or just seems a little bit off what they're looking for, I think they have no problem just deleting that person and move on to the next one. So just be able to handle rejection if you're on Hinge, because I definitely got blocked a lot more on that site for whatever reason compared to the other ones, but maybe it's just a me thing. I don't know. So overall, my take on Hinge, I would say overall I liked it for relationships because mostly 99% of females on there are looking for relationships, and it's a lot more dialed down compared to Tinder. But like I said, the downside is I would say don't expect to get as many matches compared to the other site, but just know that those matches you have are probably going to be a little bit more important, and you have a better chance to get a relationship with them compared to some of those other apps that I talked about. So overall, I would say it's pretty good, but there are definitely a few flaws with the limited swiping. Women are impatient, at least in my experience, and not as many matches that you're going to get on Hinge compared to the other sites. All right, coming in number one, and I had no choice because my girlfriend would cut my head off if I didn't. I'm just joking. All serious aside, I still have it number one, is Bumble. And the ratio of this one is about 62% male to about 38% females. So let's do our pros, let's do our cons. I'll give my final takeaway, and we'll tie a bow on this video. So pro number one for Bumble is it's definitely very relationship based, and it's very similar to Hinge. So like maybe some people like Hinge better. I like Bumble better personally. I have more success there. I got more likes, more matches. So whatever your cup of tea is, Hinge or Bumble, they're kind of intertwined, and just whatever kind of suits you best. I just gave Bumble a bit of the edge, anecdotally speaking. I did better myself on it, and of course, I met my girlfriend on there, so I obviously have to give the nod to it. The second thing is you're gonna get more quality matches. Exact same thing I talk about Hinge. I'm not gonna really get into it too much right there. And the third thing I have for you is it is the best in terms of male to female ratio. So I know 62 to 38% is still high for females. So over 6 out of 10 are going to be guys compared to girls, but it's a lot better than 75 to 25%, right? So keep that in mind when it comes to Bumble. more ladies on there, better quality matches, better chance of getting a relationship compared to all the other apps that I talk to. Some of the stats back it up, but obviously some of that's going to be anecdotally speaking for me as well. There are some cons though, and then we'll tie a ribbon on this video to conclude. All right, con number one, women have to initiate the conversation. I'm sure you do that, but nothing more frustrating, right? When you get a match, you look at her profile, she's good looking, you can tell she's a good personality, and you're just excited to hit it off with her, but then she doesn't message you for 24 hours, the conversation expires, and boom, the match is gone. It sucks, right? I'm sure if you're on Bumble, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not, just be aware of that, because a lot of the matches you actually get, they probably won't initiate a conversation. Like more often than not, they will, don't be wrong. But let's say 10 matches you get, maybe 6 or 7 will actually initiate the conversation and the other 3 or 4 will run dry, and it definitely sucks. So prepare yourself mentally for that, because it definitely got me a few times for sure. Number 2, it is a little bit harder to see the likes. So it's kind of like OkCupid, where they show you a bit of a shadow of the picture, and sometimes you can really tell, right? If it's like an obvious background and you just kind of, compare it, okay, that's the girl, either swipe left or swipe right. But then sometimes it's really hard to tell, and maybe sometimes you're just kind of bored and you're not really thinking through it, and you're just swiping left, the first picture, not really paying attention too much, and it's like you miss a like, and you're, oh crap, what did I miss? Because you're not really paying attention that much, and you're just kind of ripping through those likes. So if there's definitely one benefit I'll give Hinge compared to Bumble, is you can actually see who likes you on Hinge. And the third con I have for Bumble is it's actually really hard to master your profile setup, and profile setup is very important to it, because there's a few different layers on Bumble. Like you have to have your pictures, you can have your quotes, it kind of tells you, a little bit about yourself in those little things, like if you're Catholic or whatever it may be, your height, all this sort of stuff. So I find Bumble, you have to really optimize your profile, and I think this is really where I had success. I feel like I did a pretty good job of like mixing my photos with my personality, with my sense of humor, and there's definitely a bit of an art to it, and you want to make sure you have it dialed in, because if you don't, I find Bumble is going to be a little bit harder to get matches. So overall about Bumble, and then we'll conclude this overall video, is I definitely recommend Bumble. Of course I have to say that as well, because I met my girlfriend on there, but honestly speaking, it definitely is easier to get dates on there. The male to female ratio is better for sure on Bumble compared to the other apps I talked about, and just everyone on this site is a lot more serious, I find, and everyone's kind of in the same boat. Now, I've never really done Facebook dating, well, not really done, I haven't, or like Fish to See, nothing like that. So I can't really comment on that if that's what you're wondering about. These are just the 4 apps I had experience on, and for over 2 years. So I have a pretty good understanding of these apps and what worked for me and what didn't. So I just want to share those with you in today's video. And just remember, I talked about before on Tinder that you have to be unique. You definitely have to be unique in every single dating app, because there's obviously a lot more females to males. So I'm gonna link a video that I made about a week or 2 ago. So make sure you watch that, and it's gonna be my top 3 tips on dating apps that made me successful personally, and you're not gonna want to miss it. We'll talk soon, guys. I'm still doing my survey on 1,000 ladies. I'm plugging away in that. So if you do want to know the results of those answers, it's some pretty interesting stuff. Make sure to subscribe, because you're not gonna want to miss it. We'll talk soon.